I'm a sophomore. I am American University House, Mr. Smith's house, and this summer I got a great opportunity to work next to a scientist. My mentor, his name was Ryan Verlin, and he was a chemistry major, and basically he wanted me to learn a lot about a bacteria that is growing in a lot of places where it's immune to antibiotics, to the antibiotics that we hold. So I was just by the end of the summer, I found out that I created a new inhibitor for the antibiotic, for the bacteria that can now go on to become an antibiotic. During the summer program, they had us doing a lot of math, a lot of English, and it brought me to think that a lot of stuff that C gives us is really easy. Because I was next to 11th grader, Diana, and when me and her sit down for lunch, she says, this stuff is not even compared to the things that Ms. Cortez or Dr. Gatsby gave me during the school year. So it made me really think that this opportunity that my own school gave me was amazing. So to go into the project, basically we were screening for inhibitors of DXP synthase, and that is part of this pathway, and it's called the MET pathway. The MET pathway is basically this bacteria that's found in plants, and is very similar to a pathway called the MVA pathway that's found in yeast and mammals. My lab was the Myers lab, and basically they were running for DXP synthase, and they wanted to find an inhibitor of that will soon become an antibiotic. When I first came, my mentor, he wanted me to focus on an inhibitor that he created a couple years ago called BAT. And through that time, he had me making different types of buffer solutions. And once he learned that I knew how to make different type of buffer solutions and do the correct assay, I found that I can inhibit DXP synthase with BAT. And with that, I had to create this assay to find an IC50 curve of BAT and to make sure that it was connected to his that he made a couple years ago. This is my first time ever doing this. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing when I first came there. I really just thought I was going to be messing with fire and putting chemicals inside bottles. So when I came there, he took me straight on. He made me do all this stuff by myself. And once we got the curve, it found out that I could inhibit this bacteria by myself. So he said, let's test a new antibiotic or a new inhibitor, and it's called 1-NETAP. And this inhibitor wasn't even thought about. He just created it a couple weeks before I could test it. So he's like, I don't know if this is gonna work. Let's hope it's gonna work. If it doesn't, we'll just have to try again with something else. When we did it, the first time I did it, I found out every time I would put it in the machine, I used the UV Vis, and it's basically, it shoots a ray through the liquid that I created, the liquid of 1-NETAP, and it sees at what concentration does it drop. Does the bacteria dies. And every time I would do it, it just once it gives me the graph, it goes straight flatline. So he's trying to think, why do I mess up? Why do I keep on messing up? He noticed that the concentration that I have for a certain enzyme is too low. So he gives me one of his old papers, tells me to read through it. Another thing, I never knew how to read a scientific paper. So I'm reading this paper and I'm looking like, dude, what is this? So he sits there with me and I read it, and it's teaching me that with certain concentrations you had to add certain things, and you might just have to switch some things around to get it. When I did this enzyme, I found an IC50 curve for it, and it showed that this curve could be a better inhibitor of the enzyme that he created a couple years ago. So now it's telling him that in a couple weeks, if he keeps on trying this enzyme and it keeps on giving out good data, that we might find a new antibiotic for this bacteria. It was a big excitement for me, but it didn't catch on until I was able to stand in front of a bunch of people like today and tell them how I might be able I might be soon be able to be published as a person who found a starter for antibiotic. So this week, well, right now I'm supposed to be at work, but if I was at work, I probably would have been testing this inhibitor to see if it's a good inhibitor, so that he could send it off to his boss, and she would check it, and then they would send it off to this company that would start the process of making it an antibiotic. So that was my summer at Johns Hopkins.